The auction hall smelled like oil, sweat, and rusted chains. The crowd was loud, shouting bids and laughing at the misery on display. But in one corner, chained to a steel post, sat a figure too large to ignore. She was a giantess taller than any alien in the room, with thick arms, strong legs, and a back curved from years of forced labor. Her skin shimmered faintly purple under the harsh lights, but it was bruised, scarred, and dirt-covered. Some aliens passed by and spat near her feet. Others just laughed. She's worthless. One trader sneered, too big, too slow, and can't even breed. Another nodded. Yeah, her kind was made for birthing litters, but this one's broken inside. They called her the breeding failure, a nickname that followed her since her exile. She had no name here, no rights, and no hope. Then a human walked in. His boots were muddy, his coat old and patched, but his eyes were sharp. He wasn't like the others. He didn't smile at suffering, didn't shout for fun. He looked around, quietly, until his gaze landed on her. She looked back only for a second, then lowered her eyes. The auctioneer, a lizard-like alien with too many teeth, noticed. "You want the big one?" he said, laughing. "You can have her for 1 credit, cheaper than scrap metal." The crowd roared with laughter, but the human didn't laugh. He stepped forward, pulled out a single credit chip, and handed it over. The auctioneer blinked, surprised, then shrugged. "She's yours. Don't blame me when she crushes your house." The chains were unlocked, and the hall grew quiet. The giantess stood slowly, towering over everyone. But she didn't fight or growl. She just followed the human without a word, her heavy steps echoing in the hall. Outside, the air was cold, and the stars were hidden behind thick clouds. She walked behind the human, unsure of his reasons. Was he going to hurt her too? Was he planning to sell her again? No one gave her things without a reason. After some time, they reached a small ship. Not military, not fancy, just quiet. Inside, the human motioned for her to sit. She hesitated, then dropped to the floor instead. He looked at her for a long time, then said softly, "Do you have a name?" She didn't answer at first. No one had asked in years. "My name was Nari," she finally said, her voice rough, almost a whisper. "I'm Jack," the human replied. "I don't care what the others said. I think you've been lied to." She looked up, confused. "You don't even know me," she said. "I know cruelty when I see it," Jack said. "And I don't stand by while it happens." Nari turned her head away, hiding tears that she didn't want to fall. Humans weren't supposed to be kind, were they? She was too big for their world, too broken to be useful, and too strange to be trusted. But this one. He didn't look at her like trash. As the ship took off, Nari curled into a corner, feeling the soft hum of the engines under her massive frame. She didn't sleep, but she rested for the first time in years. Later, she asked, "Why did you waste your money on something like me?" Jack looked at her and answered without hesitation, "Because no one else would." And maybe he added, "You're not as broken as they say." Her eyes widened. Something in her chest tightened. Hope. A dangerous thing, but in that small ship, flying far from the auction block, it felt real for the first time. The smell of fresh soup filled the cabin, but Nari didn't wait for it to cool. She grabbed the bowl with both hands and drank like a dying woman in a desert. Steam rose around her face, but she didn't flinch, even as it burned her lips. Her huge body trembled as she swallowed, eyes wide, desperate. Jack watched from the corner of the room, not saying a word. She had eaten 5 bowls already, and it still wasn't enough. Her species needed more food than humans. Sure, but this wasn't hunger. This was survival. She hadn't been fed properly. In months, maybe years, the auctioneers used to throw scraps in her cage bones. Rotten fruit, dry powder. Now, for the first time, she was eating real food. Warm, soft, made with care. Nari didn't speak as she ate. She didn't thank him. Didn't look up either, but Jack didn't mind. He just refilled her bowl again. Outside, the wind howled across the frozen hills of Solus 4. The remote planet Jack called home. No one came here, which made it perfect for someone trying to hide. A giantess the galaxy had thrown away. She finally stopped, breathing heavy. soup dribbling down her chin. Then she said, "I didn't mean to eat it all." Jack smiled a little. "It's fine." "You needed it more than I did," she glanced at him, unsure if he was being kind or sarcastic. "You're not going to sell me?" she asked suddenly. He shook his head. "No." Her voice dropped. "Use me?" "No," he said again. Firmer this time. "You're not a tool." She leaned back against the wall, looking around the small wooden cabin. There were strange things everywhere. Photos of human landscapes, books stacked on the floor, tools for farming, even a small dog bed near the heater. Jack lived like someone who had once been busy, but now chose silence. Naria asked why. "Did you bring me here?" Jack thought for a moment before answering. "Because you look like someone who needed a second chance?" She let out a dry laugh. "Second chance? My kind gave up on me the day I stopped ovulating." Jack tilted his head. "They said you couldn't reproduce." She nodded slowly. "Too big," they said. "My system couldn't carry life anymore." "But you're young," Jack said. "You don't look sick." Nari gave a bitter smile. "They don't care about health, just results." Then she pointed at her stomach. "No child came from here, so they tossed me away like trash." Silence filled the cabin again. Jack finally asked, "What do you want to do now?" Nare didn't answer right away. No one had ever asked her that before, not once. After a while, she whispered, "I don't know how to want anything anymore." That night, while Jack slept on the couch, she stood by the window staring at the stars. They used to mean hope, adventure, dreams. Now they just reminded her how far she'd fallen, but the warm soup still rested in her belly. And the blanket Jack left near her feet was soft. Maybe not everyone wanted something from her. The next morning, she helped him chop wood, her large hands making the job faster. He showed her how to hold the axe, how to clean the fire pit, how to calm the farm dog when it barked at her size. She said little, but every hour, she stood a little straighter. Her body still carried pain, but her soul had space to breathe now. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Jack brought out a portable medical scanner. "I need to know," he said gently. "If they were wrong about you," Nari flinched. "I'm not an experiment," she said, voice tight. "I know," he replied. "But if they lied to you, maybe you deserve to know the truth." She stared at him. No one had ever said that before, not even close. Nari slowly nodded. Jack handed her the scanner and stepped back, giving her the choice. The screen lit up, blinking with soft colors. She pressed it to her stomach. Beep. Scan in progress. She held her breath, her hand shaking slightly. Then a result appeared on screen. Jack read it, and his eyes widened. He looked up at her slowly. "Nari, you're not broken." Her breath caught. "What? ... What does it mean?" "You can bear children," Jack whispered, stunned. "Just not with your species." Nari's mouth fell open. She stumbled backward, dropping the scanner on the floor. Everything she believed, everything they told her, was a lie. But before she could speak, her knees buckled, and she ran out the door into the darkness. Jack shouted her name, but she was gone, swallowed by the trees and shadows. Thunder cracked across the sky as Jack sprinted through the trees. Rain fell like bullets, cold and fast, turning the forest floor into thick, sucking mud. He could barely see 5 feet ahead, but he kept going because she was out there. Nari had run into the forest the moment she saw the scanner's result. He didn't blame her. To learn your whole life was a light, to realize you were never broken, just mismatched. That kind of truth could shatter even the strongest mind. Jack pushed a branch aside, calling out, "Nari, where are you?" No answer, only wind and rain and the deep groan of distant thunder. His boots slipped on the soaked roots, but he didn't stop. She was too big to move fast, but she was still stronger than anything else out here, unless she fell, unless suddenly. He heard it, a splash, then a cry, short, low, and full of pain. "Nari," he shouted again, panic rising in his chest. He followed the sound to a steep slope near the river. There she was, at the bottom of the hill. Half buried in mud, one leg twisted at a wrong angle, her massive body was curled near the edge of the river. Water licking at her side. "Don't move," Jack shouted, sliding down the slope himself. She didn't speak, Her eyes were shut tight. Her face pale with shock. Jack knelt beside her and touched her hand. It was ice cold. "You came," she whispered, barely audible over the storm of... "Course I did," he said. "I'm not leaving you." He looked at her. Leggett wasn't broken, but it was dislocated badly. She wouldn't be able to walk on her own. And the river was rising fast. "We have to move," he said, trying to get his arms under her. "You can't carry me," she whispered. "I'm too heavy then." "I'll drag you," he said. "I don't care how long it takes." Nari's eyes watered. She hadn't cried in years, but the tears came now, quiet and hot. No one had ever come for her before. No one had stayed. Jack dug his heels into the mud and started pulling. Her body was massive, but he didn't stop, inch by inch. He dragged her uphill, muscles burning, breath short, rain blinding him behind them. The river overflowed, swallowing the slope in dark water. By the time they reached the cabin, Jack collapsed beside her, covered in mud and shaking, but he smiled. "You're safe now," he said between gasps. Nari looked at him like he was something unreal, something impossible. Later that night, after her leg was wrapped and braced, she lay in silence on the floor, staring at the fire. Jack sat nearby, watching the flames dance. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't run because of fear," she said. "I ran because I didn't know what to do with the truth." Jack nodded. "It's okay." "I spent my whole life being told I was a mistake," she continued. "Then suddenly, I'm not." Jack leaned forward. "What do you want to do now?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I don't know. But maybe I'd like to stay." Jack smiled softly. "Then stay." Nari looked down at her leg, then up at him. "You carried me when no one else would," he shrugged. "You would have done the same," she laughed. A strange sound from such a large body, low and rough, but full of warmth. "No," she said, "I would have tried. But I don't think I could have carried you." They both laughed. The storm outside finally began to fade. The next day, sunlight filtered through the window for the first time in a week. Nari sat up slowly, wincing at the pain in her leg. But determined to move, Jack made her tea strong and bitter. Just the way she liked it now. She looked at the scanner still resting on the shelf. And for the first time, she didn't feel fear when she saw it. She felt possibility. Jack walked over and handed her the tea. "You don't have to decide today," he said gently. "I know," she whispered. But inside, she had already decided something. This place, this human, maybe. This was what a home felt like. Asterisk. The message came at midnight. Jack was asleep on the couch, the fire crackling low, when the comlink device blinked red for the first time in months. He rubbed his eyes, sat up, and pressed the receiver. A distorted voice came through, calm but cold. "We know you have the outcast giantess." Jack froze. No name, no introduction, just a threat in disguise. "You are holding property of the Varelli matron core," the voice continued. "Return her to our custody. Our consequences will follow." The line went dead before Jack could reply. He stood still for a long moment, then turned toward the bedroom. Nari was already standing in the hallway, her eyes wide, hands trembling. "You heard it," Jack said quietly. She nodded. "They tracked the scanner signal," she whispered. "I should have destroyed it." Jack clenched his jaw. "You're not going back." Nari looked at him, her voice small. "You don't know what they'll do to you for protecting me. I don't care," Jack said. "You're not theirs." For a moment, silence fell between them, heavy and sharp. Then she said something that chilled Jack's blood. "They don't want me back because they care," she whispered. "They want me because now I can breathe again." Jack's hands curled into fists. Suddenly, it all made sense. The cold voice, the urgency, the mention of property. They didn't want Neri. They wanted her womb. And worse, they might try to take the child if she ever carried one. The next morning, Jack began packing. Neri helped, even with her injured leg. They worked fast, quiet, serious. There was no time to cry, no time to panic. They had to disappear again, but the Varelli were rich. Powerful and ruthless. They had scouts, drones, bounty hunters. in tech beyond most empires. Jack knew hiding wouldn't be easy this time. He also knew he'd die before handing her over. They took only the essentials tools, rations, blankets, medical gear, and Jack's old pulse rifle, dusty but still loaded. As they stepped out of the cabin, Nari paused and looked back one last time. "This place was the first home I ever had," she said softly. Jack nodded. "We'll build another." They left just before sunrise. Moving toward the southern mountains, thick forests, deep caves, old abandoned mines, the perfect place to disappear. But 2 days into their journey, they heard it, a humming sound in the sky, slow, circling, searching. Jack pulled Nari beneath the trees, motioning her to stay low. A sleek black scout drone flew overhead, scanning with red beams. Nari gripped Jack's hand tightly. "It's them," she whispered. "Varelli, hunting tech." Jack aimed the pulse rifle and fired. The shot missed, but it spooked the drone, which zipped away. "They know where we are now," Jack muttered. That night, they didn't light a fire. They didn't speak. Nari stared at the stars above. "Heart pounding, mind racing, they'll never stop," she said at last, her voice hollow. "Even if we run to the end of the galaxy." Jack sat beside her, quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Then maybe it's time we stop running." Nari turned to him, surprised. "You mean fight?" Jack nodded. "If they want a war, I'll give it to them, but not on their terms." The next day, they changed direction. Instead of hiding deeper, they moved toward an old human outpost Jack once helped build during the frontier wars. It was long abandoned, hidden inside the cliffside, shielded. Defensible and stocked with emergency gear, it would be their last stand inside the outpost. Nari looked at herself in a cracked mirror. For the first time in her life, she didn't see a burden. She saw a warrior. Beside her stood a man, just a man, but willing to fight an empire for her. No one had ever done that before. She touched her stomach, slowly, gently. The doctor had said she could carry life now with a human like Jack, and maybe she already was. The test strip turned green. Nari stared at it, hands shaking, heart pounding so hard it echoed in her ears. She sat on the floor of the old human outpost, surrounded by dust wires, half-dead lights, but the world felt completely still. It was true. She was pregnant, Jack's child, something her people swore was impossible. Her giant body, once called defective, useless, cast away like waste, was now creating life. Tears filled her eyes, and for a moment, she forgot about the war outside. She forgot the bounty on her head. The cold metal walls couldn't crush the warmth building in her chest. Jack walked in, holding a repair tool, his shirt stained with oil. "Something wrong?" he asked gently, noticing her face. Nari held up the test. Barely able to speak, Jack blinked, then stepped closer. He read the strip and froze. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he dropped the tool and dropped to his knees beside her. "You're sure?" he whispered. She nodded slowly. Jack's breath caught. They had survived war zones, escape routes, hunger, pain, but nothing prepared him for this moment. He touched her cheek, eyes filled with disbelief and awe. "We're having a child," he said, the words feeling like thunder and music all at once. Nari whispered, "What if they find out?" Jack's joy shifted to fear, because he knew if the Varelli matron Cora discovered she was pregnant, they'd stop at nothing. She wasn't just a runaway anymore. She was proof of a cross-species miracle, and worse. For so was now a weapon they could use or control. Nari stood slowly, one hand over her belly, and looked toward the locked steel doors of the outpost. "We have to disappear completely," she said, "or they'll take our baby," Jack agreed. They upgraded the outpost's defenses using old military code. Jack still remembered: motion traps, camo fields, signal blockers, and satellite jammers. He even rigged a warning system with heat sensors and shock mines. Every second became precious. Nari started reading human pregnancy books Jack had saved from his mother, but the beds were too small for her giant body. So Jack built a bigger one from scrap metal and padded it with spare uniforms and blankets. It wasn't pretty, but it was hers. She smiled when she saw it and whispered, "No one ever made something for me before, but peace never lasts for." Long one morning, the sky above the canyon filled with distant ships. Not Varelli, but worse. The Intergalactic Science Syndicate had picked up strange biological data and traced it here. They weren't soldiers, they were harvesters. They didn't care about rights, borders, or consent. They only cared about results. Nari spotted them through the outpost's long-range scope. 3 scout vessels landing a mile away. Jack gritted his teeth. "We have 2 hours, maybe less." He handed her a small pack of food and supplies. "Get into the lower tunnels." He said, "I'll hold them off," Nari growled. "No, I'm not leaving you." "You're not leaving me," Jack replied. "You're protecting our child." The word "our" made her heart ache. It was the first time she believed it wasn't just her burden, it was their shared hope. She kissed him roughly, quickly, with everything she was afraid to say. Then she limped into the tunnels, ducking low, every step fueled by something fierce, something maternal. Below the outpost was an old mining shaft, dark, deep, full of rusted machines and abandoned carts. But it would hide her for now, above ground. Jack stood at the front door with his rifle loaded and traps ready. He whispered to himself, "You're not taking her, and you're not taking my kid." The first wave came fast, hovering drones scanning for heat signatures. Jack shot one out of the sky with a single blast, then dropped a smoke bomb to block their vision. He moved like a ghost between old walls and rocks, setting off traps, luring them in deeper, one by one. The syndicate troops fell into pits, mines, and stun bursts, but there were too many. Jack was injured, a gash across his shoulder, a cracked rib, but he kept fighting. Meanwhile, down in the tunnels, Marie touched her stomach and whispered, "Stay safe, little one. Your father's a storm." Her scream echoed through the tunnels like thunder and stone. Nari collapsed against the cold rock wall, her massive hand clutching her belly. It was too early, too soon. The contractions had started. Sharp and deep, stealing her breath and twisting her insides. Sweat poured down her face, her skin pale under the weak torchlight. Not ready, not here. Not now, not while Jack was still fighting above. But her body didn't care. The baby was coming. She bit her lip to keep from screaming again, not wanting to alert any scanners. He was hidden deep in the old mining shaft, behind a thick blast door Jack had welded shut before the fight began, but she was alone. She'd never felt more helpless in her life. Up above, Jack's world had turned into smoke and fire. The syndicate forces had pushed him back to the inner perimeter. He was bleeding, limping, one arm nearly useless, but still standing. He didn't know yet that Nari had gone into labor. He thought she was safe, resting, waiting, but time was running out. Inside the cave, Nari forced herself to breathe through the pain, the way the book described, but she was too big for this space. Her body was different, stronger, but harder to control. A sharp wave of pain hit again, this time stronger. She gasped and whispered, "Jack, I need you." Down the tunnel, a security light blinked red. Someone was trying to breach the lower shaft. Nari's heart stopped. "They're coming," she whispered. She dragged herself toward the wall where Jack had hidden a small plasma blade. If she had to fight to protect her child, she would, even if she couldn't stand, even if she died doing it. But just before the door could be breached, the blinking stopped. Heavy footsteps echoed through the metal stairwell, followed by a voice she'd never been so happy to hear. "Nari." Jack shouted, coughing, limping. "Where are you?" "I'm here," she cried, her voice breaking. "Jack, it's happening." Jack stumbled in, covered in soot and blood, his face pale from pain, but when he saw her, he froze. And then he dropped to his knees beside her. "Breathe," he said, holding her hand. "I'm here now. Just breathe." "I can't," she cried. "I don't know how. My body's not made for this. I don't know what to do." Jack looked around the cramped cave, bare rock, loose blankets, emergency supplies, and made a decision. He tore open the medkit set, upped the heater lamp for warmth, and rolled up his sleeves. "You're not doing this alone," he said. "And you're not dying today?" She laughed through the pain. "You don't even know how to deliver a human baby." Jack smiled, even as his hand shook. Good thing this one's only half human. Hours passed in groans, screams, blood. In tension, Jack guided her through every wave, every push, every moment of fear outside. The sky burned red with fire from crashed ships and broken drones, but inside the cave, something new was being born, and then the sound that silenced everything. A cry, small, strong, real. Jack wrapped the tiny child in a clean cloth and placed her in Nara's arms. The baby was bigger than any human newborn, with glowing violet eyes and soft golden skin. Nari stared down in shock, her heart cracked open. I did it, she whispered, tears falling freely. I made life. Jack leaned against the wall, exhausted but smiling. She's perfect. Nari looked up at him, trembling. What do we do now? Doc looked toward the blast door and listened. No more footsteps, no more machines, only wind. They're gone, he said. We survived. Nari held her daughter close and whispered, They said I couldn't be a mother, but look at her. Jack sat beside them and wrapped his arm around Nari's shoulders. No one's taking her from you, he said. Not while I'm breathing. And for the first time since her exile, since the chains, since the cruel words that shattered, her spirit Nari smiled, not because she was safe, but because she was finally complete. Legends don't begin with glory. They begin in the dirt, in the blood and sweat of the forgotten, and somewhere deep in the frozen cliffs of Solus IV, in a quiet cave filled with warmth and newborn cries, a legend was born. Nari lay against the stone wall, her daughter wrapped tightly in her arms. The baby slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling with soft breaths. Nari watched her with wide eyes, still unable to believe it. This tiny life had come from her. From a body once labeled defective, from a soul once left to rot in chains. Jack sat beside her, bruised and burned, but grinning through the pain. She looks like you, he whispered, strong from the start. Nari smiled, her voice quiet. I used to think my body was a curse. Jack reached out and touched the baby's hand. It wasn't, he said. It just needed the right reason to fight. Days passed in silence and healing. No more syndicate drones, no more bounty hunters. The scanners stayed cold. The galaxy thought Nari was dead, and maybe. That was good, because in this small cave, she was finally alive. But peace never lasts forever, not for people who carry fire in their blood. One morning, Jack returned from a scouting trip with news that chilled Nari's heart there. Talking about you on the Black Channels, he said, the child too. Nari's fingers tightened around her daughter. What are they saying? Jack looked her in the eye. They're calling you a scientific miracle? And a threat? The Varelli matrons had offered 10 million credits for the child alive. The syndicate had placed a silent bounty of double that for both. And worse, human syndicates were getting interested too. It's not because of science, but power, crossbreeding, new soldiers, new futures. Nari sat in silence for a long time. Then she stood, slowly, powerfully. I won't run anymore, she said. Jack blinked. What do you mean? I mean, it's time they hear my voice, she said. The voice of the one they threw away, over the next few days. Nari and Jack worked to repair the old satellite dish hidden in the cliffs. He reactivated the long-range transmitter and cleared the interference. Then she stepped into the stormlight and spoke. This is Nari, once cast out by the Varelli Corps. Once called a failure, once called worthless. She held her daughter up to the screen. I am not broken, she said, her voice steady. I am a mother. And I will not let my child be a science project, or a tool, or a trophy. Gave birth in the dark, alone, in pain, but I did it with strength that came from love, not hate. To all those watching know this, she said, eyes burning. If you come for us again, I will not run, I will fight, and I will win. The message echoed across the stars. It reached rebel colonies, abandoned slaves, outcasts hiding in the shadows. And suddenly Nori was no longer just a runaway. She was a symbol. She was proof that life could bloom in the ashes, that even the unwanted could become something more. Months passed. Jack built a hidden farm deep within the canyon, shielded by tech and terrain. Nari raised their daughter with hands that had once been chained, but now held with love and pride. The baby grew fast, stronger than either of them expected, with strange abilities neither fully understood. Sometimes she could sense things before they happened. Sometimes she would cry when storms approached towers before the clouds arrived. Jack would smile and say, "She's got your strength and something extra." Nari would laugh, "She's got your stubbornness, but every night." When they held her close and whispered stories of stars and survival, they both knew one thing. This child wasn't just theirs, she was the future. One day a scout drone landed at the edge of their canyon. But it didn't come with weapons. It came with a message from a rebel leader. "We saw your broadcast," it said, "and we believe you." Nari stared at the message for a long time, then turned to Jack. He nodded. "You ready to lead them?" he asked. She looked at her daughter, then at the stars above, and smiled. "I'm ready to change the galaxy."